What we just saw here is pretty shocking. That's not the kind of headline that we want to send around the world. That America can't be depended upon. That America can't deliver trade agreements.
Isn't at the core of the problem here that some of the most prominent figures in the president's party on Capitol Hill are simply not with him on this?
There are a number of Democrats who do not intend to support this legislation. A no vote on this procedural situation should not be interpreted as a change in position on the substance of the bill. There is a Republican majority in the Senate, but it's not a filibuster-proof majority, which means that for anything to become law, party line votes are not going to cut it.
Well, the procedural situation that Josh Earnest was talking about was a cloture vote today that went down 52-45, and Democrats abandoned the president on this trade bill. So what happens now, and why did it happen? Let's bring in our panel. Steve Hayes, senior writer for the Weekly Standard, A.B. Stoddard, associate editor of The Hill, and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. A.B., it wasn't even close to 60.
No, there are pro-trade Democrats who are with the Republicans and the president, and they are going to support this ultimately. But they stuck with their liberal colleagues today on this sort of procedural question of whether or not you'd have all four issues addressed in this vote or just two. When it was in committee, all four of these issues, these enforcement language that the liberals feel must be attached, were attached, and then that fell apart. So I spoke with Senator Nelson today. He is a pro-trade Democrat who voted no, but intends to vote yes, and he's very hopeful that it'll come back to the floor pretty quickly. It is exactly what the reporters were questioning Josh Earnest about today. It's a difference in the party. It's a Democratic food fight. Do they have the votes? They have the votes. Is it likely that they'll get out of the Senate? Yes. The House is another matter.
But Steve, does this show that President Obama doesn't have juice up on the Hill anymore?
I think it does, and I would argue that this, in combination with what we've seen from Hillary Clinton, her, I think, rather dramatic tacking to the left over the past 3 weeks, in particular on one issue after another, suggests to me that Elizabeth Warren might be the most important Democrat or most powerful Democrat in the country right now. I mean, she is managing this stoppage, this blockage of this trade. She's sort of spearheading the efforts against the president on this. She was writing letters months ago when this was barely being covered, and she's responsible for Hillary Clinton tacking to the left. I think she's got a ton of SWAT up there, and I think one of the reasons that she was able to be as successful as she was, particularly on this, is that President Obama doesn't have a lot of goodwill among Democrats up on the Hill. He's not buddies with them. He hasn't spent the time talking to them, cultivating them, socializing with them. And look, a lot of people outside of Washington, I think, roll their eyes at that and say, well, is that really that big a deal? The president is still the president. I think in matters like this, that's when it can have an effect.
This is Senator Barrasso and Senator Warren talking about this issue today.
It's the Democrats who are standing in the way of what is one of the president's prime domestic policy plans for the economy of this country. It's the Democrats who are blocking this.
Over and over, American workers have taken the brunt of bad trade deals. If we show a little backbone, if we show a little gumption, that we can rebuild America's once invincible middle class.
I mean, it was amazing to see the White House, and specifically the president, confront Elizabeth Warren, saying she's dead wrong in a number of interviews.
Well, it would help if when the president says she's dead wrong, he would actually make a case to explain why, rather than say, I would never sign a deal that's not good for the working Americans. Trust me, that's what he does with Iran, that's what he does with everything. Trusting him is a little hard after what he's done with Obamacare. If you like your plan, you keep it. If what he said about Iran, this will prevent a nuclear weapon, it's going to do the opposite. So trust is not an argument. But I think what it does is it sort of interrupts the favorite media meme that Republicans are in the midst of a civil war, where they're going to have to suspend that when they look at the open civil war among Democrats. And what's happened is that the party has moved radically left. On most stuff, Obama likes that. He likes it on issues, on social issues, on drug laws, all that kind of stuff, immigration. But on this, acting in the national interest as president, he knows that in the end, free trade is a good idea. And this agreement in particular is extremely important geopolitically as a way to hold our Pacific Rim allies, who will be cut loose and will enter into China's orbit if we don't. But the thing is, it's not just that he doesn't schmooze with Democrats, he never stakes or puts out there any political capital. Has he made one national address on television about the importance of this? If it's his #1 priority, where has he been? He never does that. He expects it if he says, I like this, trust me, people ought to follow. Well, the answer is they won't, particularly Democrats won't.
Senator Reid, Senate Minority Leader, put out a statement saying this: the simple fact is that to pass the Senate, bills must have strong Democratic support. Nearly every bill passed by the Senate this year has enjoyed the support of over 90% of Senate Democrats. Senator McConnell, the Majority Leader, needs to work with Democrats for our votes. I hope he will reconsider his approach. I mean, AB, that's pretty rich from Senator Reid.
Well, he doesn't mince words. You know, he's having a wonderful time anytime he can block Senator McConnell. McConnell's actually asked his colleagues to stop behaving like a minority and hang together and to prove that they actually are the majority, and Senator Reid is the minority leader. But this is really a Senator Reid versus the president's wings of the party. And Senator Reid has more numbers. Elizabeth Warren has more numbers. And the Hillary Clinton question is absolutely critical. President Obama is indulging her this silence, while, as House Speaker John Boehner says, she is embarrassing him. She's either going to do a huge flip-flop, or she's going to go back on the argument that Charles just articulated, that this is a foreign policy tool to our Asian pivot, and it's very important going forward across many platforms. And so we're waiting word from her, but she's just going to let Obama twist in the wind.
She was the one who made that exact argument when she was in office.
With the gold standard of trade agreements.
I want to play one soundbite from the president today. He was at a poverty event talking about poverty, and this is what he said.
The effort to suggest that the poor are sponges, leeches, don't want to work, are lazy, are undeserving, got traction. If you watch Fox News on a regular basis, it is a constant menu. They will find, like, folks who make me mad. I don't know where they find them, right? They're all like, I don't want to work, I just want a free Obama phone or whatever. And that becomes an entire narrative, right, that gets worked up.
Charles.
Well, the president speaks with such authority about what's on Fox News. He says if you watch Fox News on a regular basis, he seems well acquainted with what we do. I think Fox ought to run a full-page ads welcoming Obama into the viewership of the #1 network. And we should be proud of this.
He does seem to have us on his mind a lot.
I think he does more watching than people would suspect. This is something he's done before. He's mentioned Fox News a lot, and it's actually interesting that if you look at what's going on with Mayor de Blasio, Senator Warren, President Obama, there is a big question about how much to indulge the left right now. And where was Hillary Clinton at the poverty conference?
Quickly.
I mean, come on. If he actually watched Fox News, I mean, remember back to the number of people on this network who criticized Mitt Romney for the 47% comments, or for his comments that shouldn't be concerned about the very poor. I mean, it's a distorted view of Fox. It's not the first time. It surely won't be the last.
Mr. President, if you're watching us right now, you've got a tick. It can be cured.
Next up, the fallout over CIA veteran Mike Morell's contention that politics trumps security with the Benghazi talking points.